First, let me express my appreciation for being invited to be a part of this project. I consider it very significant to the preservation of the history and legacy of the college. As to my involvement and first learning about Morehouse would go back, and I'll be brief, would go back to my elementary schooling. I attended a school which my grandfather constructed along with a church adjacent to the school, which practically all of my family and many individuals from the surrounding community attended for the first through the 7th grades. The name of that school was Fishing Creek. It was named for a prominent stream nearby. And it was the typical one-room school, and many times had only one teacher. And the primary teacher during my time was named Florine Blunt, who was a cousin of Mrs. Mays. And through Miss Blunt, I first learned really about Morehouse because of Dr. and Mrs. Mays' annual visitation to that area. Dr. Mays became the prime topic of many of our little discussions in the school. And Mrs. Blunt, Miss Blunt, she never married, Miss Blunt, was very conscientious in seeing to it that we learned early on about the Mays family, its impact, and Morehouse College. Then after finishing Fishing Creek in the 7th grade, I moved from the country. This school, Fishing Creek, was located in the rural areas, about 20 miles south of Macon. And it was really for years the only opportunity for minorities in that area to really get some education, basic education. And I recall many times walking to that school, about 2 miles from our home. And at that time, the road was not paved. And the buses transporting the non-black kids to Milledgeville would cause us to have to jump out of the road to avoid mud being splashed on us as the bus transporting them. But really, we did not at that time recognize that as a handicap or burden, because we were taught very early on the significance of getting an education. So after the 1st through 7th grade training at Fishing Creek, I moved then to Macon, where I attended Ballard Hudson Senior High School. There, well, let me back up. I really attended Ballard Normal High first for the 8th grade. And then after the 8th grade, both Ballard and the Hudson High Schools were merged into a new school, Ballard Hudson Senior High. So I attended Ballard Hudson Senior High for the 9th through the 12th grade. And it was really at Ballard Hudson where I received my main inspiration for attending Morehouse. There were several Morehouse alumni teaching at Ballard Hudson whom I admired very much. And they in turn thought apparently that I had some potential. So they made some contact with the administration at Morehouse and arranged for one of the Morehouse alumni there to administer the examination, which apparently, I think at that time, all scholarship applicants had to take. So he administered this examination, and shortly after the submission of the results, I received an offer with a tuition scholarship to attend Morehouse. And that solidified my decision as to where I was going to go to school. And that was interesting to an extent because I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters, all who attended and graduated from Fort Valley State College. So I broke the trend,
I see.
and I've never regretted that.
Wonderful.
Right.
I'm sure.
So that's where I really learned about Morehouse and decided on continuing my education at Morehouse.
Very good. Before we get to your first, one of the questions we asked is, what was your first day at Morehouse like? But before we get to that, could you go back a little bit and tell us a little bit about your parents? What did they do? What kind of occupations? How did they make a livelihood? Just a little bit about that.
Sure. My parents were very instrumental in all of our going to school. They assisted us as best they could. They both were farmers, but fairly successful farmers, as my grandfather was. And they both, in particular, my mother, was the one who really created the idea, or at least implanted the idea in all of our minds that we had to go on to college. So it was really didn't appear to be much of a choice that we were going to college, but the choice was where we would attend. So they supported and encouraged us both morally and financially, as best they could.
I understand. Now, what are their names, and was that an exception in that area in that time, that your parents put a high premium on going to college? Was that commonly the practice in?
That was not really the common practice during that time. Mm-hmm. Interesting, my father attended Payne College, Haynes College in Augusta, which preceded the current Payne College. Well, he attended about 3 years and then decided that he was going to go move back, stop and work with his father on the farm. But my mother did not receive any training beyond the 7th grade. But as I said, she was very, very much, though, committed. Now, I have referred several times to my grandfather, and I say that because I always thought it was so unusual that he was able to do so much with really no education. It was his second wife who really taught him how to sign his name. But in addition to building the school and the church, he was a successful farmer and a well-respected person in the community. So again, we were a large family. There were 7 of us, 5 boys and 2 girls. And
give us all the names first, your parents' names.
All right. My father's name was Augustus George Perdue, Jr., and my mother's name was Tommy Clowers Perdue. And my mother lived to be 99 years old. My father lived to be 79 years old.
And you had?
Oh, and I had 6 siblings. There were 5 males and 2 females. Both of my sisters now are deceased, and there are only 3 of the 3 males, 2 brothers and myself, and I am the last. I'm the last one.
Now, if we can come to Ballard Hudson, there were alumni there. Do you recall their names, the gentlemen that were at Ballard Hudson High School that encouraged you or influenced you?
The primary one was Quentin Everett, and Robert Washington. But also the principal was very instrumental. He was not, as I recall, we call him Professor Martin. He was an alumnus of Talladega, but he encouraged me he really, I discussed it with him, and he realized that I was interested in Morehouse, and he encouraged me to attend Morehouse.
I had a similar experience. My principal was a graduate of Fort Valley, yet he encouraged me to come to Morehouse. But I was influenced by a Morehouse man who was my guidance counselor.
Is that right?
So we had similar kind of experience.
Exactly.
How we got to Morehouse.
Morehouse,
I
right.
was thinking about perhaps going somewhere else as well, but did come here.
Right.
So that background is very telling about how Morehouse men end up coming to this venerable, old, respected, beloved institution called Morehouse College. And that's going to be a very important part of this new story that we're going to tell to the college. How is it that we get the students here? Can you recall your first, had you been to Morehouse before you arrived as a student? What year did you come first of all?
Well, I had I'd been to the campus as during my high school period several times, not visiting the campus per se, but visiting Coach Franklin Forbes. Coach Forbes was married to the sister to the sister of one of my sister's husband. In other words, Mrs. Forbes was the sister of my sister's husband. Charles Sheftall and Ethel Sheftall Forbes were brother and sister. And when I moved to Macon to go to high school, I lived with my sister and her husband while I was attending high school. And frequently on the weekends, we would come up to visit the Forbes over on Fair Street and spend the afternoon with them. So on many of those occasions, I took advantage of the opportunity to walk around on the campus and kind of get an impression of what the college campus was like.
Yeah, that was an exception because a lot of us, even though I was only 50 miles away, I'd never been to the campus. And a number of us, the first time we saw the campus was the day we arrived for freshman orientation, as it's called now. So that's an interesting slant or angle to how you came to know us. Now, speaking of Dr. Forbes, was he from the Bibbs County? Where was he from?
No, he was not from the Bibbs.
Georgia?
I don't believe he was from Georgia. I'm not absolutely certain.
Okay. We'll check on that. But I remember him quite well.
Right.
Very, very classy and gentlemanly.
Yes.
Very good. So you knew the campus before you arrived, but still you got to arrive as a freshman to begin your first year at the college. What year was it? And your first night at the college or first day, what do you recall that first? That's a very important thing we want to get from our alumni.
Well, I guess one of the first recollections I have after having been moved in Grace Hall on the 3rd floor with two roommates, William Thomas Barnes from Macon and Robert Barnes from a little town they come to me in Alabama. And I guess maybe I forgot it, I don't remember as much about him, is because he was not very punctual about getting up, going to class, and going to the dining room. And so he didn't do very well his first semester. And those of us who know Dean Brazil didn't tolerate his level of mediocrity. So he had a very short tenure at Morehouse. His ended at the end of the first year.
Yeah, those are the days. They did not pull you out of graduation line.
To give you just as an aside, in the line of humor, and you're talking about some of the first experiences we had. This was our first night in Grace Hall. And as you may recall, the upperclassmen who were back early to assist with freshman orientation, well, some of the upperclassmen would take advantage of that opportunity to kind of harass us a little bit, And so we turned our light out, and and kept relatively quiet for a long time to give the impression that we were not in the room, which tended to work for a while. So eventually, after we thought everything was safe, my roommate Barnes from Macon and I started singing. I sang first the school song for Ballot High, the one I said earlier merged with Hudson. The second song my roommate Barnes sang, which was the alma mater for Ballard Hudson Senior High. And so after I sang, then Barnes said, I'm going to sing our alma mater also. So he sang the one, the Ballard Hudson. Then after he finished, this roommate from Alabama said, I be darned, G, you know my school song was named alma mater too.
That combination of Alabama, which often many schools had.
Right. So anyway, so he didn't last very long. Dean Brazil sent him on back to little Alabama town. But I guess the next incident I recall was standing out the next day, standing out in front of Grays Hall with Maynard Jackson. Maynard was there, and somehow he and I struck up a conversation, and Maynard began to tell me some things about Morehouse and why he thought I would like it, and assist in my overcoming some of the typical maybe freshman jitters, you know, and that was an incident. I guess somebody, and I don't know who it was, somebody took a picture of that, of our standing talking, and gave it to me, and I still have it somewhere. But that was one of the memorable moments, and also I recall meeting Pop Warner, and that was also a very interesting and beneficial experience, because it certainly taught me that you could be effective in what you do without necessarily being overly aggressive, you know, and many times it would be much more receptive. So those were some of my early, very early, like first day and first, maybe second day experiences.
So how many men were in your incoming freshman class? Can you recall that? I recall in mine we had 252, and that was in '61. So how many?
I think I don't remember, but we had maybe, I would estimate maybe 220 or something like that, because the total student body wasn't much over 500. In fact, we were all able to get into Sale Hall, Chapel. Yeah.
Dr. Mays was the president when you came.
Dr. Mays was the president.
First impression.
One of the very first impressions that I had that he was, as he proved to be, a very dynamic and inspirational person. And we remember until, at least I remember until today so well, the little get-togethers he would have with the students. Many times they would just be tea and cookies. As an opportunity, he would invite different groups on Sunday evening sometime to come by and just chat. And that was very inspiring.
Now, you met Maynard. I think Maynard was a year before you.
Maynard was a year before me.
So you met Maynard, your roommate, who was from Macon. And
right.
Macon was considered a big city for a lot
right.
of students.
Exactly.
And then, of course, the other roommate who didn't last long. Is Maynard or your roommate one of your most unforgettable schoolmates? Or is there some other person that was a student at Morehouse, doesn't have to be your classmate, that is just unforgettable? I have in my mind one man who you may be familiar with, Buddy Crutch. You may know the name Alfonso Crutch. Not my classmate,
Oh.
not my roommate,
Okay.
but he was unforgettable. I will
Okay.
never forget the infamous Alfonso Buddy Crutchman. Is there somebody in your class, when you were at Morehouse, not necessarily a class, can be in your class,
Yeah.
but some student before we go to faculty that just stands out as somebody you will never forget?
Yeah, well, I guess the other person, in addition to Barnes, and I refer to Barnes again because he and I were good friends in Macon, and we roomed together for 4 years at Morehouse. And after Jones went home, we received Samuel Atkins, who later became a medical doctor, specialized in urology. We roomed together in the old units, as they were called then, Quartz Coat, and for the next 3 years.
Same room?
Same room. There were 3 of us in the same room. Unit 5.
Oh, yeah. Wasn't on the second floor, was it?
No,
Yeah, I don't know the
corner
second
room,
floor, room 5.
corner room next to the old garage.
Oh, yeah, I
Yes,
remember that.
yes.
Yeah. So is Dr. Atkins or Samuel Atkins the most memorable?
I think so. You know, I mean, he impressed me because we all had to work. You know, we had to work. We had various kinds of jobs. I, for instance, worked as the R.J. Reynolds cigarette representative. Now you must say at that time, it was not it was not known that it was as fatal as it is. But I was the distributor for sample cigarettes, all the brands that R.J. Reynolds provided. Sam Atkins worked in the dining hall down at Atlanta University, and he would get up, and I was so impressed with this. He would get up between 5 and 5:30 every morning, regardless of the weather conditions, and walk down to, as you know, at that time on Chestnut Street. He would walk down to the cafeteria on Chestnut Street to assist with the food services, you know. So I remember him. And then we had another roommate, Davis. His first name would come to me. But we all had nicknames back in those days. And this schoolmate Davis, nickname was the Pie Man.
The Pie Man?
Oh, he was nicknamed the Pie Man because he came through the dormitory at night selling fried pies. And we also had a laundryman. And he actually was a dry cleaning man because he would come through the dormitory at night and pick up items to be dry cleaned and bring them back, and we would pay him. You know, so, but anyway, back in that day, we all had nicknames, and mine, and I really don't know how I was given this, so I can't explain it, but mine was PP.
PP, all right.
PP.
Maybe the last name Perdue.
Yeah, I guess so, maybe so.
Mine is Barkey, as you may know.
Oh, okay.
The gave that
Okay, okay.
That's fascinating. It'd be interesting to look at some of the nicknames of our alum.
Yeah, exactly.
At the colleges,
Exactly.
telling the
Right.
texture to the story.
Sure, sure.
That's a good insight. You mentioned the dining facility. Now, when I arrived in '61, the dining hall was in the basement of Robert Hall. Was it?
It was still, it was in the basement of Robert Hall.
Describe that. I know what it looked like, but
That was a real experience.
Yeah.
And during my time, we entered the dining hall by way of a little stairway from the first level of Robert Hall, and Pop Warner would be down at the foot of the stair checking tickets, and we would go in, and while the food sustained us, but it was not always very gratifying. In fact, just as an aside, that was probably the source of the biggest student, I won't say rebellion, but contention, I guess, while I was here. In fact, the student leader at that time decided that we, as a protest of the food in the dining hall, would boycott the dining hall during Religious Emphasis Week. And if you know the premium that Dr. Mays placed on Religious Emphasis Week, you would know that that would be a major offense to do anything to distract from not only the program but the general atmosphere during that time. So this person in his mind has slipped me, his name has slipped me, but unfortunately he's deceased. He was hit by an automobile as he stepped off the sidewalk into the street, and his name would probably come to me. But anyway, he was a very smart student. He was a straight A student, and but because of this, his lead in this food uprising, the administrative student council met on him, and the first reaction was that he had to go home.
Expelled?
At least suspended.
Okay.
But fortunately, Dr. Brisbane and Dr. E.B. Williams, and E.B. at that time headed that committee. Is that right? And so, but they prevailed in suggesting, that he be placed on probation but not suspended. And so consequently, he did not, have to leave the school. But it does indicate back at that time that was a major issue of concern. But now it's considered that something like that would be routine.
It's much improved. There's no question about the food and the surroundings of the facility itself.
Sure.
Because I remember that same dining hall.
Right.
We got Mays Hall.
Right.
Mays Hall was open while I was.
This guy's first name was John. I can't think of his name.
He'll come to you. So you're at Morehouse. You're taking the requisite freshman courses. How did you come to decide on your major? First of all, what was your major at Morehouse? And how did you come to make that decision?
I majored in business administration and minored in economics. And I guess I very early on even before I enrolled at Morehouse, had kind of thought in terms of making my career in some aspect of business, not specifically school administration, but some aspect of business. So I came with the notion that I wanted to study business, and my freshman year, I took the basic course in accounting, principles of accounting, from Leif Kane, who at that time was Bursar. The fiscal officer at that time was called Bursar. And Leif was impressed with my classroom work. So he one day asked me, would I like to work in the business office as a student worker? And I told him, sure, I would love to. And this was my freshman year. And I began working in the business office my freshman year. My primary responsibility was to keep accurately the records of the students. I had to keep all of the students' financial records posted and checked to make sure that they were accurate.
And this is in Harkness Hall?
This was in Harkness Hall, which was shared with Atlanta University at that time. Another one of my side duties, though, was to stamp the mail for all of the administrators in Harkness Hall. And most of them would send their mail down to the business office sometime I would have to go and pick it up, in particular in the president's office, because sometimes their student helper would not come, or for whatever reason, it wouldn't come. I would have to go up. And that afforded me the opportunity to have contact and discussion with Dr. Mays on many occasions, because frequently when I would go to pick up the mail, he would be talking to one of his assistants there in the office, and he and I would have a momentary exchange. And I remember an interesting experience with him there in the office. One day I was there to pick up the mail, and they had not quite finished stuffing the envelopes. It was a mass mailing. And so I kind of stood waiting for the people to finish, his assistant, and I think he had a student helper, stuffing the envelopes. And so Dr. Mays said, well, young man, and Brother Perdue, there's too much unfinished business in this world for you to be standing here twiddling your fingers.
That sounds just like Dr. Mays.
Yeah. So you know, that somehow kind of began the stimulus that I felt at Morehouse. You know, it was reinforced in the classroom by the teachers. It was reinforced in the weekly assemblies by Dr. Mays himself.
Chapel in those days.
In chapel in those days. And if Dr. Mays was in town, he was there on Tuesday. Yeah. And so I would say my real kind of employment connection with Morehouse began at that point, because I feel without a doubt that, and I don't want to jump ahead of whatever your questions are, but I feel without a doubt that that was the reason that Wendell Whalum suggested to Dr. Gloucester, when he was looking for somebody at that time to be registrar and director of admissions. And that is what I came to Morehouse to be.
We're going to get to that
Yeah.
in short order.
Okay, but let me just pause then at this point and take it in the sequence that you want to.
Because my next question is, you decided to major in business administration and minor in economics. That is a very large division of the college now. How large was it then?
It wasn't very large at that time. In fact, the faculty was very small, and the student enrollment was growing. And as a result of the limited faculty at Morehouse, I had to take a significant number of my courses at Atlanta University. This was an arrangement that Morehouse and Atlanta University had worked out, that undergraduate students could take courses along with graduate students. So as an undergraduate student, I took a lot of my courses at the graduate level. So again, kind of getting ahead, it made it possible for me to be able to get my master's at Atlanta University in 12 months. I enrolled in one summer, and the following, at the end of the next summer, I was awarded my MBA because I had taken most of the graduate level courses as an undergraduate, which I was able to get credit for at the undergraduate level, and Atlanta University accepted on the graduate level.
How common was that? That is, Morehouse students taking courses at AU. I know a lot of us who are graduates of Morehouse have our masters from AU. I have.
Right. Right.
But was it kind of common that a lot of Morehouse students did that?
Well, I think it was, to my recollection, probably business, business and art. You know, there were a few areas. You know, like for instance, I had a nephew who finished Morehouse in art, but he really took most of his art courses at Spelman.
Right. Still today, that's
Yeah.
the way it works.
And there was a student named Shoemake. Y'all know if you remember him. Yeah, you will remember because he was outspoken.
Yeah, he was.
He majored in hotel and food management.
Really?
Well, you know, Morehouse had never offered any courses like that. He took his courses at Morris Brown, but received his degree from Morehouse.
Now, that's something that's interesting for us to explore. I did
Yeah.
not realize that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Now, in terms of your professors at Morehouse or at AU, but more specifically at Morehouse, just as I asked you about an unforgettable schoolmate,
Sure.
who was your most unforgettable professor? Wendell Whalen was mine.
Well, Wendell was not a professor,
Right.
but he was a friend. He was a friend.
Who was yours?
He was a real friend. But in terms of professors, I guess I would have to name two instead of one,
That's fine.
because it would be a toss-up. One was Dr. Williams, who was E.B. Williams, who was my major professor. And the other one was Professor Dansby, Claude Dansby, math teacher. I was very impressed with both. Professor Dansby, I remember so well, as most of the students, I'm sure all of the students who took a course from him, he would start writing and he would go all around the wall. He wouldn't stay on the board. He would write on the board and on around the wall. And also he would say this to the freshman class, that if you can count from 1 to 9 and come to my class, you would pass. Now, you don't have to come. You can pass without coming, but it's doubtful. It's very doubtful. He says, now, I'm going to check the roll today. That was the first day of class. I'm going to check the roll today. But hereafter, there will not be any roll checking. It's left up to you to measure up to the standards that I have established for this class. And if you can do it without coming, that's your business. I said, but I promise you, if you can count to 1 to 9 and come to class and be attentive, you will pass this course. And that was, that was interesting. And I found that to be pretty much true. For the fellows who weren't very conscientious, if they went to class, they were able to pass. But generally he had a certain range of material that he was going to cover. And if you weren't there, it was your loss.
Yeah.
So
Very engaging professor.
he was a very engaging professor. And I remember also Dr. Williams. Dr. Williams was very similar. Dr. E.B. Williams would have an outline of the scope of materials which he would share with you at the beginning of the semester. And he would pretty much cover that material, and you could read the book and understand that, but you needed to be there because he embellished so much, in terms of what was currently happening that you would not get in the book. But he was inspirational to me. He was very exact, and I appreciated that, and so those were the two. And also admired Dr. Jones, Fred Jones, E.A. Jones, his French teacher. Yeah, he was a very exacting, and I never shall forget one of his favorite gestures was if some of us weren't prepared, he would go to the window and lean out the window like he was going to jump out. And the fellows would jokingly say sometimes, well, we're going to push him out one day, and he would make this comparison too that would kind of upset some of us. He would say, well, if you ride by the dormitories at Georgia Tech at 10, 11, or 12 o'clock at night, the lights are still on. They're not out. Where are your lights?
Speaking of lights being out and our own, was there curfew when you were here? Did they have a curfew at least for freshmen, or did they have it for all of the students, or had that been abandoned by that time?
It had been pretty much abandoned. Okay. Yeah, it had been pretty much abandoned. Yeah.
I was reading the other day where they had a curfew at 6 o'clock.
Yeah. No.
That was back at the early.
That was early. Yeah.
Okay. social life. What was the social life in the AUC, but more specifically Morehouse, Spelman, and AU?
Yeah, well, that was, I think, a very adequate and interesting social life. There was much intermingling of particularly the Morehouse and Spelman students. In fact, on Sunday afternoons and early Sunday evenings, I think we had to be off the campus by 6 o'clock. At Spelman's campus, yeah. And the fellows call it, I don't know why they did, but they call it, going over to Spelman to call on the young ladies, they call it willing. Willing. Are you going to Willie today? That means, are you going to visit Spelman's campus? But if you would move through the campus, you would see so many Morehouse fellows over there on Sunday afternoon. You would think they were domiciled on that campus, But at about 5 minutes to 6, a big bell would ring, and by 6 o'clock, you had to be off the campus. Yeah. So, but that was a very close interaction between the Morehouse and Spelman. As I observed as a retiree, that particularly during homecoming, I mean, it was just traditional that Morehouse students would choose queen from Spelman. I remember one year they chose an attendant from a nursing school across town, and it created a lot of friction.
When I was here, we had 1 or 2 queens, not Miss Moon and White, but 1 or 2 from Clark, and I think 1 from Earth Brown.
Is that right?
Yeah,
okay.
It was kind of unusual,
Right.
but it was allowed to happen. In terms of social life, when I was here a few years later, we had social occasions in Reed Hall or in Archer Hall.
Okay.
By the time I got here, we had Archer Hall. Did you have Archer Hall when you were here, or was it the other facility that we had? I think
Didn't have Archer Hall.
Where
No.
was basketball played?
Basketball was played in the old gym.
The old gym.
The old gym.
And that was located essentially.
That was located
where Forbes Arena is?
basically where Forbes Arena is. Yeah, it was the old barn that we call it. Call it the old barn.
Could the Spelman women come over for basketball?
Oh yes, the Spelman.
They had to be escorted.
They had to be escorted. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, because when I was here, women taking classes at Morehouse had to have an escort back to the campus. They just couldn't come in like they do now.
Right.
Times have changed.
Oh
Times
yes.
have changed.
Yes.
So you have the Morehouse experiences in the classroom with your schoolmates, with your members of the faculty. You decided to major in business administration.
And minor in economics.
And we're getting ready for commencement 57. What were your feelings about finishing your undergraduate work at Morehouse as you were about to exit? Was there some nostalgia?
Yeah, well, it was an exciting time. This was in 57. And I was related to another, just a little earlier, exciting period on campus, and that was in 1955. That was when the Warren Court issued the decision on the desegregation of public schools. Yeah, and I think that was like May 17, 1955. That was a very, very Brown versus education. That was the decision. That created a lot of discussion and a lot of excitement on campus. Students were talking about it, and it was somewhat, now that I look back, I guess I would say, well, it was a little surprising, the level of interest I recall that existed among the students about what was happening. They were very excited. There were discussions among the students. There were discussions in the classroom. There were discussions with faculty. I mean, it was a major thing, you know, on campus. Obviously, it was major, you know, nationally. But I mention that because in 1957, which was my year, Dr. Mays awarded Martin Luther King an honorary degree in recognition of his successes relating to the Montgomery bus boycott. That was another very exciting period. You know, I mean, it was almost mind-boggling to be present, to witness the recognition of such achievement.
So Dr. King actually came.
Exactly.
Where was the commencement held?
The commencement was, as I recall, the commencement was, I'm certain, was in Sale Hall.
Okay.
Yeah, we had joint baccalaureates. We joint with Spelman, but the commencements were separate. Yeah, and so that was a high point, you know, and very memorable.
So how many people were in your graduating class, and you kind of guesstimate as best you can?
I would say.
One had gone back home.
Yeah, that were. Well, then also you have some, you know, who are rollovers, we call. I would say we had approximately 100, somewhere like maybe 130.
Okay.
Yeah, 130. Yeah.
What was the celebratory activities around commencement? Were there any kind of parties?
Well, there were parties. The fraternities, in particular, had parties leading up to the practically all of the fraternities would have parties prior to commencement, and there was a lot of interaction there between Spelman and the Morehouse students. So that was a very fun time.
Are you a fraternity man?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha.
All right. I remember the old Kappa Dawn dance and the old Magnolia Ballroom.
Oh, yes, yes.
I won't say anything else about that Kappa Dawn
No,
dance.
well, in fact, in my day, you know, the old Magnolia Ballroom and the Walla Hodger Ballroom were about the only two places that we could have.
Very little changed when I got there.
Exactly, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, wonderful. So now you've graduated from Morehouse, if we may move forward, what is your next move? What do you do now that you have your Morehouse degree in hand?
Well,
Did you start AU?
I immediately started at AU. I graduated in June, and I enrolled in the summer school immediately following graduation. And I took some courses, I think a couple of courses that summer, and began planning for my master's dissertation, and also had a few courses that I had to take the first semester of the following year. But I was also able to work simultaneously on presenting my topic before the routine type committees and getting it approved and getting an advisor appointed. So I was able to move on through so that I was able to get my master's at the end of the following summer. And that was in 58. And I wanted to continue my studies, but for financial reasons, I had to move to some employment for a while. So I applied to a number of colleges, and one of them was Savannah State. And I got a response from several, but Savannah State was nearest. And so I responded to that one, and the president, who was a Morehouse alumnus, Dr. William K. Payne, contacted me and told me that he was going to be in Atlanta for a meeting and would be staying at the old University Motel. I don't know if you remember that on Northside Drive. Yeah, that too was a place that one of the maybe 3 places that we could go socially. Yeah, and so he was staying at the University Motel and wanted to know if I could meet him on a certain day at a certain time. I told him sure. So I went there and started to tell him about why I thought I was qualified to be on the faculty at Savannah State. So he cut me short and told me, he said, well, now, Brother Perdue, I know more about you than I think you imagine. I say, I have taught with Professor Martin. That was my high school principal.
What was his name, Professor?
R.J. Martin.
Okay.
R.J. Martin. Yeah, he said, Professor Martin has given you an unqualified recommendation, which to me is enough. And he says that now I'm going to make you an offer as an instructor in the business department at the college, and you take it and you respond to it. Let me know what you think about it. So that was my first job. Wow. And I worked at Savannah State College and also began advanced studies during the summer. First, I got a Ford Foundation fellowship to go to Indiana University, and I continued, and I also did some advanced study at Ohio State, but I was concentrating on it at Indiana University. And so I stayed at Savannah State during the 9 months of the year and going to summer school during the summer until from 1958 to 1969. Okay. In the spring of 1969, my love affair with Morehouse began.
All right.
And that began by our inviting Hugh Gloucester, who was president of Morehouse at that time, to be our honors day speaker at Savannah State. After he spoke, he stopped by the administration building to see me, and I wasn't in. At the time, I was really working myself crazy. In addition to being registrar and director of admissions, I had moved from, I taught for 4.5 years. And since this involved a Morehouse alumnus, I'll mention this briefly. My predecessor in the administration was named Ben Ingersoll, who was an outstanding honor graduate of Morehouse. He had a stroke and was not able to function as effectively as he normally did.
And his job was? And
his job was registrar, director of admissions, and director of the computer center. Mm-hmm. And so he had, so unfortunately, he had the stroke that impaired him, and on one Sunday afternoon, his wife and a friend went out, and he told him that he didn't feel like going. He wasn't going. So, but anyway, make the long story short, when they returned, they found that he had hanged himself in the garage, in the backyard. And so at that time, Howard Jordan was president of, Dr. Payne had retired, and Howard Jordan was president of Savannah State, and he called me. He said, well, Wiley, Ben is no longer with us, and we got a big void there, and I say, I know, from your record that you've had some experience in all that's needed to do this. I said, well, Dr. Jordan, I said, I'm not so sure that I'm ready for administration. I kind of think I want to finish my academic pursuit. He said, well, Wiley said, you may do that, but I'm going to tell you, I want you now to do this at least temporarily. And if you don't like it, before the next school year begins, we'll employ somebody else. Said, but I want you to help me out.
Now, what year was this now?
This was in, let's see, this was about 1960, this was about 1965, about 1965. And so, so I remained director of admissions, registrar, and director of the computer center from 1965 through the school year of 1969. And that was when Dr. Gloucester came by, and though I was not in my office, he left his business card with his phone number asking me to call him. And then I called him, and he told me that he needed a registrar and director of admissions at Morehouse, and that several persons had highly recommended me, and that he very much wanted me to come back. And he says that I would like for you to come up here so we can talk about it and just be together. So I did. I came up here one day and spent a whole day with him, you know, on the campus and off the campus. He rode me all around and showed me, you know, the sections of Atlanta that were not hospitable to us when I was here. So I decided to come on board as registrar and director of admissions. But after about 3 months, he came to me, which was after that fall board meeting. He came to me and asked me to move from the registrar and director of admissions to the business office. He said he would like for me to be the business manager. I think they had changed the title then from bursar to business manager. And so I told him, you know, I said, well, Hugh, I don't know about this now. But I thought about it, you know, and he talked to me, and I promised him that I would give it a try. And so that was my beginning as a regular employee. Now, however, I had worked, as I mentioned earlier, 5 years in the business office as a student, because I was 4 years as an undergraduate student at Morehouse and the year that I was a graduate student at Atlanta University. So,
kind of knew the business affairs.
so I knew very much about, you know, much about the operation of the business office. So that was the beginning, you know, of my formal administrative relationship with the college, which lasted for 27 years, plus that 5, if you add the student years. I began really in late summer.
Late summer, okay.
In late summer of '69.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you may recall in the spring of '69, there was a student hostage takeover, I think we're going to call it, when the Board of Trustees.
Exactly.
Held,
Exactly. And I was aware of that, and I considered that, but I had experienced much of that at Savannah State. So I as a part of the administration there, so I wasn't too alarmed about what I had heard because of similar, you know, experiences.
It was kind of nationwide.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
What was business affairs like when you arrived here? Julius Lockett, did you succeed him?
I succeeded Julius Lockett.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I succeeded Julius Lockett, and it was really interesting, you know, because I came from Savannah State, where we had kind of modernized the information system for administrative and academic purposes, and Morehouse at that time had not really taken a major step to upgrade the information system. So that you know, came about within a relatively short, not because of me, but because of the collective effort initially of the Atlanta University Center, you know. But jumping ahead though, we did move on the end to kind of go it alone and establish our own system, which we'll talk about later.
Now, as the, what was the title? Now we call it Vice President for Business Affairs, or
Yes.
CFO. What was your title as the business manager? Was it just the Morehouse Business Manager? What
Yeah,
was it?
the title initially was just Morehouse Business Manager and Assistant Treasurer. I was also Assistant Treasurer to the Board of Trustees. Right. So I had a responsibility of reporting both to the President and to the Board.
And so this is early in the administration of Dr. Hugh Morris Gloucester.
That's correct.
Who were some of the other members of his, we call it the cabinet now, I'm not sure of what it was called then, but his inner circle of top administrators? He was the business manager.
Charles Bell, I think, was the first registrar during my time. He became registrar while we were still over in Harkness Hall. So Charles Bell was registrar, and he also was director of admission. Those two positions had not been divided at that time.
Student affairs, who was that?
At that point, Dean Nix was still in charge of student affairs. Yeah.
In terms of student financial circumstances, reflecting on your years at Morehouse and what you, as a student, and what you recall from those years compared to what you experience now as business manager, was there some appreciable difference? Was students better off, or were they no better off financially? The reason I kind of laugh because I was one of those students who was not well off,
Right.
struggling to get through. I worked 8 semesters when I was here too. I was in the registrar's office. So I'm just wondering the student, a general profile of student financial health, we might call it.
Yeah, I would say comparatively, and I say comparatively because we had a smaller student body, but I think on a comparative basis, we probably had roughly the same percentage of students, which was fairly low, of students who were able to, whose families were able to pay all of their fees. So, in fact, this was one of the things that I learned from both Dr. Mays and Dr. Gloucester. You know, I heard students talk about, for instance, Nathaniel Mosby. You may recall him. Nathaniel Mosby was a Morehouse alumnus. He finished along with me, but he was older. He was a veteran. He went to the military and came back and finished during my time. And he became some kind of official later out in DeKalb County. But he's deceased now. But he was a very friendly person and loved Morehouse. And by the way, was one of about 3 persons students who had cars on the campus at that time. And he had one because he got veterans benefits and was able to get it. But I heard Nate Mosby say many times, you know, if it hadn't been for the willingness of Dr. Mays to understand and assist him, he would have never finished Morehouse. He, you know, and that impressed me, you know. And at the same time, when I came to work with Dr. Gloucester, I soon realized that very first registration, I soon realized that that would be a major, you know, that should be a major responsibility of mine. And I accepted that, you know, and I trust that somehow that void is still being filled. Because to me, that was the most gratifying aspect of my work at Morehouse. Right now, you know, every day almost as I move around, I encounter Morehouse alumni who express their appreciation to me for the assistance that I gave them. You know, I mean, it's not that I just paved the way, but I work with them. I would call different alumni groups. I would call different sources like the United Negro College Fund, you know, businesses whom I knew about in that area and appealed to them. And many, many times they would come through and assist. And that was for a lodge. And I'm sure you passed through Gloucester Hall sometime during registration and see how many and saw how many students would be in a line to see. That to me was a gratifying aspect, very gratifying aspect of my service to Morehouse, you know, in working with these students who could have easily been just turned away, you know. And I'm hopeful that even though we are now highly mechanized with the modern technology, I'm hopeful that there will always be that human concern that will make some alliance in instances where legitimate reasons are provided. Yeah.
I think that's going to be one of the important themes in this narrative history I'm writing, is the theme of men who came to Morehouse with limited resources.
Exactly.
Sometimes with no resources.
Exactly.
But somehow people such as yourself,
Right.
Julius Lockett, Dr. Mays,
Right.
us and others, found a way to
Exactly.
keep us here.
Exactly.
And we graduated, and certainly we are part of the success story of Morehouse. So you were at Morehouse in the 1970s. I'm about to get to a period in your tenure at Morehouse that I'm going to let you just tell the story.
Okay.
Dr. Leroy Keith becomes president in 1987. He resigns in 1995, was it, or 94?
94.
Just tell us that. I mean, there are all kind of rumors. Tell your story on that. I'm going to, you tell it as you want to tell it.
Well,
Or not tell it if you don't.
my impression was that, and I'm not really going to get into the specifics, you know, but there were some obvious things that I think that in some way, you know, not cause what all happened, but showed some kind of insensitivity on the part of the administrator at that time to what was customary, what had been customary. You know, an example was, you know, most people who are fairly close to Morehouse knows that with certain businesses, and one or two in particular, there's been such a close relationship between them and Morehouse for years. And in my opinion, that in addition to the specifics that may have been mentioned for reasons, I think also a part of that was the insensitivity in some decisions made as related to some of these major ongoing business relationships that the college had. I think that played a part in it.
One story that I have heard is that Bill and Camille Carsby were supposed to give $10 million to Morehouse and $10 million to Spelman, but ended up giving all $20 million to Spelman. Is there any inside information about that you can reveal? We know that we didn't get the $10 million.
Right.
So,
Right.
so what happened there? What can you tell us about?
Well, I think that maybe in the transition, there may have been some lack of continuity, because as I recall, this discussion with the Carsby family began during the Gloucester and Stewart's began during Gloucester and Stewart's tenure.
Donald Stewart, just for the
Donald Stewart,
Yeah, President Spelman.
who was the president of Spelman. And I think when the presidential changes occurred, there was some lack of a mutual continuity in pursuit. And as a result of this, I think that we did not come out on an even basis in the decision-making process.
Do we get anything? Did the Cosbys give us anything?
Not at that time.
Not at that time.
No.
So the issue had to do with, was it with the construction of buildings? I heard that we were asked to construct a similar building to the Cosby Center at Spelman on our campus, but that the top administrator at that time chose to construct what is now Kilgore Hall. Is there any truth to that rumor, that story? That's why Bill Cosby was upset?
Well, I have heard that,
Okay,
but I don't have any verification. You know that was a factor. But I think as best I could say is that there was a lack of the continued contact and discussions during the transition.
Very interesting. Dr. Glass was on the board, wasn't he, at that time? Was he on the board of trustees?
He was on the board, yeah. He was on the board, but I don't know how well because I'm technically still on the board myself, but I don't attend.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Dr. Keith chooses to resign, and you then succeed him as the acting president of the college. Tell us about that transition from being a top administrator to now the CEO of the college,
Well,
president of the
yes, that was a tremendous responsibility, because not only did I have to, assume the responsibility of the presidency, but I also carried on the responsibility of the chief financial or fiscal officer.
So you really had two?
I really had three titles, really. I had the office of the presidency. I still had the vice president for business affairs, and I was still assistant treasurer to the board. So it was a real responsibility, challenging responsibility. But I had been around Morehouse for so long, I think I was adequately prepared to do it. And unfortunately, the most challenging aspect of it was dealing with the student deaths. If you may recall, early on, we had 3 student deaths that didn't occur on campus, but nearby. And as a result, many of the parents thought that the campus was unsafe, that there was a security problem on campus. So that was a major challenge and responsibility for me to really travel around the country to try to reassure the parents that students on campus were safe and that we were trying to provide as much peripheral security as we possibly could. But the primary responsibility was still the city for the off-campus, So that was a major challenge because parents were really, really alarmed about those 3 deaths, and that was so unique and so uncommon, that you would have 3, in such a short period of time. So that was on top of all the other responsibilities. That was quite time-consuming itself. But I think if you look at though what we were able to do within that year's time, is interesting. Not only did we plan and erect the memorials to both Dr. Mays and to Dr. Howard Thurman. We also negotiated the agreement with the Olympic Committee and got the approval and funding and began the construction of the new gym on campus. We also acquired the land, which under the plans at that time, which the board had approved, this building, the Leadership Center, would have been located on land down across from the Woodruff Library. That's where the suites are.
Okay.
So, and then when my successor came, he was able to get approval to switch it around and put the president's residence on campus and put the Leadership Center here and the Suites Center over there. But we were able to acquire that land, and it was a unique opportunity because it would have been years before Morehouse would have been able to acquire it if we had not taken advantage of the opportunity of acquiring it under the umbrella of the Olympic Committee. The Olympic Committee had eminent domain rights, which the college itself does not have. So we were able to work with them and acquire all of that land. And we were also able to institute a new information system, which I think the college is still using. They have embellished some aspects of it. We began the information management system. We launched a strategic planning, budgeting, and evaluation process for the college. We negotiated the agreement with the Atlanta Olympic Committee to acquire the land and the building, the 5,700 seat gymnasium. We acquired the land for the Leadership Center across from the Woodruff Library. We funded the construction of a 200-bed student dormitory, and we managed the financial affairs of Morehouse College for 27 years without incurring a deficit, not being able to meet any payroll.
All right. Now the dormitory, is that the one that's in your honor?
That's the one that's named, yeah, right, that's the
Just
one.
a little bit about that. How did you feel about that? I mean, few of the leaders have buildings that is nationally speaking. Do you have a building?
Sure, sure. Well, I was very honored to be notified that the decision had been made to name that building in my honor. That I think by far certainly is the most notable and among the most appreciated recognitions that I have received, and will always be appreciated by me. Yeah.
Your legacy, as I said at the opening, you have run the gamut from being a student worker, to an alumnus, to then a employee in the early stages of your career back at the college, all the way up through being a chief administrator to being the president of the college. What would you want your legacy to remember you as an alumnus of college? And telling your Morehouse story that we've heard over the last hour and a half or so, we've heard a lot of interesting and very valuable stories about that experience, which can be paralleled with hundreds of us Morehouse Men in different ways. Your story is unique. It's your story, not mine. Mine is so different from yours. What then would be your legacy to your alma mater, Morehouse? So, what do you want us to remember?
Well,
Dr. Wiley, Perdue.
I would want my legacy to be that a young fellow from the Red Hills of Jones County, Georgia, rural area, was able, through determination and motivation of leaders whom he appreciated, was able to move from being a young fella with limited means to be able to attain his education and be able to also reach the level that he would be qualified to assume and oversee the stewardship of Morehouse College at a desperate time in its history, and that he was able to serve the students by assisting literally thousands of them to be able to enroll so that financially, so that they could complete the pursuit of their education.
Can you imagine having gone to any other college?
No, I really could not. I really could not imagine going to another college and have the same level of pride, love, and respect for my alma mater, other alma mater that I have for Morehouse College.
Two final questions. The first to the last question is, we talk about the Morehouse mystique. For you, what is that? I mean, we all challenge to try to describe it, define it. None of us really can. But we all have an idea of what it is. What is it to you?
To me, the Morehouse mystique is what leaders like Benjamin Mays and Hugh Gloucester and many others projected, qualities that were inspiring. You know, when Dr. Mays, said that failure was not, but having but having no dream, no objective, no goal is sin. It's that kind of atmosphere that Morehouse creates, and to me, that's the mystique. The mystique is that at Morehouse, an atmosphere of high expectation is created. An atmosphere of such high expectation that you feel bad, you feel somewhat guilty when you don't give it your best. And to me, that's the Morehouse mystique.
After that, many times before that, you have this crown over here.
Yeah, that crown. Exactly.
Final question. Who are some of the Morehouse men that you know, maybe in your peer group or in your school group, that may be willing to give us interviews that we should not overlook? We're trying not to overlook anybody. And certainly we are going to interview as many top administrators, presidents, and others, but who are some of the other people who have been associated? Don't have to be graduates, as a matter of fact. We are certainly looking at Morehouse stories, but there are a lot of people who have worked at Morehouse. For instance, I would love to have gotten Mrs. Agnes Jones' story.
Sure.
Oh, that would have been a story too.
Exactly.
But so, give us like 3 names.
Well, one I would give because of his love for and work for Morehouse, and that's Benjamin Logan, one that we know as Perdue.
I saw him the other day.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You have him on the list?
Oh yeah, I think we've already interviewed Perdue.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Well, that was Mrs. Baco's funeral.
Okay.
And we talked. So he's familiar with the project.
Oh, okay.
And I told him we were going to interview him again like this.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, he is one because I think he would give you a very interesting perspective. Mm-hmm. You know, that would add some more luster to the, to the history. Well, let's see. I guess
we're going to interview Dr. C. Clayton Powell next Monday.
Okay.
So we got him already on the list.
Okay.
We interviewed Dr. Du Bois Cook once, but we're gonna do that again.
Okay.
We can't get Leron Bennett. We're gonna be able to go
No.
up there.
Right.
I don't know
Right.
what his health is now, but people you know, I don't wanna keep throwing out names.
Okay.
But-
Well, now, what about Renwick? He's a Morehouse alumnus and served as trustee for years.
What's his first name? I can't.
Fred Renwick. Now, his would be, I think, very interesting.
Yeah, I think so too.
Fred Renwick. Now,
Fred Lofton still with us?
huh?
Fred Lofton, does that name ring a bell?
Oh yeah, Fred Lofton. Yeah, Fred Lofton was a year or two ahead of me. Last time I heard of him, I think he was in Memphis.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
believe.
I
Uh-huh.
just have that name when you.
Yeah, Fred would be a good one.
One of the-
And now, I don't know. He's not. I think he's trustee emeritus now, so I don't think he attend. But Dwight Minton. Now, Dwight Minton would be an interesting one. He and his family are over this Arm and Hammer. But his father, Dwight's father, was on the board years with Dr. Mays, and most of them came from the New York area, and they would come down and vote those one day for Morehouse, one day for Spelman, and one day for Atlanta University. Dwight Minton's father was on the board really when I started, but he soon retired, and then his son took over, and he was a very, very committed trustee. So you may, if you want to, get another perspective,
Yeah.
you know.
As a matter of fact, we want to interview as many former board members or current board members as we possibly can. We're gonna continue this through 2017.
Okay.
By 2017, when we are 150 years old, college, we want to have at least 1,500 interviews, at least that.
Okay.
1,500.
Okay.
But then the project won't stop then. We're gonna stop.
Okay.
Once we are
Okay.
150, we're gonna keep doing it.
Okay.
I may not be in
Yeah,
charge.
okay.
I'll
But
leave
the
it to
project
you.
would
That's
continue, right.
The idea of interviewing.
Sure,
more.
sure.
Because see, we have a lot of young men who are graduating,
Sure,
and so they
Sure.
have their more stories
sure,
too.
sure.
But it's more important that we get the stories of us. I have to sit for an interview. I haven't given mine yet.
Sure,
Somebody's
sure.
gonna have to interview me.
Oh.
That's gonna be interesting.
That is
We
gonna
might have
be.
to have a big audience. Because I have some of similar memories
Sure,
that you have.
sure,
All of
sure.
us have these memories of
Yeah,
love. for the
exactly.
So, Dr. Perdue, we really appreciate you giving us this time this afternoon to give us this very rich Morehouse story, as we're calling it. I would encourage you to write your own story, to put yours down.
I am very much in the process now of gathering my materials and getting to the point of kind of organizing it, such that hopefully, while the mind has the clarity to do it, that I will be successful in completing it.